Walking and walking up the stairs.
It's being out of
Yeah.
breath.
The other side will come later in the meeting when I'm like, oh.
My favorite story is still when I remember I woke up the day after my birthday, after I turned 50,
Yeah.
50 in one day. I woke up and yawned and I grew up. I yawned. Oh, don't worry. When you turn 50, the warranty is expired, so
Yeah.
everything breaks after the
Update,
warranty.
okay,
is
my
over.
it's all I've updated then. That's true.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that.
Have to make it all the way over friction before 5.
Let me find it.
Yeah.
Census can be
I
easy.
tried to open from the website. Is it internet?
You have to say the C word.
Did I turn off?
Well, you should have it usually over.
Good day for a bike. Good day.
But we're making sure Councilman would have.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and call this town council's work session for April 21st, 2026 to order. And let's honor our nation. Join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think we have some commitments. We're trying to get through this as quickly as possible. I know Councilman Gray, you have to.
We go watch Apex play Apex Friendship and girls lacrosse.
Very good.
And I got 5:30 down town road, so we'll go ahead and turn it over to town clerk Alec Coleman to get started. Thank you.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, we will try to keep everything concise and succinct. We've got a lot of things that we want to cover today. we're gonna high level walk through a couple of follow-up items that you all have requested. Council committees, resident advisory boards, a few of policy updates. What you will see, as we go through the agenda is, kind of the purpose of today's meeting, the research, the data set that was, evaluated and analyzed, kind of a proposed flow of the work session, and then we'll dive into each portion of the various sections. Really, this is around, as we continue to grow, wanting to make sure that our policies and our procedures match how we are growing, making sure that we are consistent with other municipalities, similar sized municipalities, and then identifying areas where we really need council's direction on. Some of these items can be heavy and can appear to be a lot. So I would just ground us and remind us that we're really, trying to be community focused, respectful and collaborative, clear and concise. And I think I'll say this, at least from my perspective, is we don't really have a proposal or an opinion about what we feel like you all should do. This is really what you all feel like you want to do. So we'll show you the data. The data will speak for itself, and then we'll ask for some guidance from you all. So as we go through each section, I will present the research from the data set, and then we'll have some discussion, and then I'll ask for some direction from you all based on that discussion so that we can know how to proceed going forward. I'll start with the research. So I surveyed 21 municipalities across North Carolina. In doing so, we looked at cities or municipalities as large as 900,000. We looked at small as 50,000. Apex is included, which is why you see 21. If you take out Apex, then it would be 20 municipalities. So Apex is included. You will see in this data set, it was a range of whether the mayor had voting power, whether the mayor didn't, whether they were 2-year terms, 4-year terms, whether they had council committees, whether they didn't, whether they had resident advisory boards, et cetera. So it's a wide range of data sets. I will start by just giving kind of a visual overview of what the common themes were or what the data showed. So in this data set, the mayor's legislative authority, 48% of those 20 that were surveyed showed that the mayor votes in all matters. And then the other was split between only breaking a tie or a tie and personnel related decisions. Council committees, 52% of them utilize the council committee structure, whereas 38% of them do not. And then the others were either committees as a whole or they create them ad hoc as needed. Also, when we look at kind of understanding our resident advisory boards, one of the questions that has come up is whether we have too few or too many of our resident advisory boards. We do have, as you see, this is the number of municipalities on the y-axis and in the x. So we've got 7 municipalities that have 7-ish advisory boards, 6 that have between that 10 to 19 advisory boards, and so forth. So we fall into that 0 to 9. We currently have 6 advisory boards and over 58 members that are appointed to those boards. So based on this data set, I will also, you might think that, well, based on the larger municipality, they have the most advisory boards. That's not always a correlation. So actually the one that has 40 is Winston-Salem. It is not Charlotte or Raleigh. Also, a couple discussions have happened recently about terms, going to in-year elections and so forth. And so one of the things that you will see is 67% of the Thank you. All right, terms, 67% of them showed that they have 4-year terms, whereas 19% show all two-year terms. And then the mix, what does that mean? There are some that have the mayor as a two-year term and council as four-year terms, or all as two-year terms. Again, election type. So there are some with staggered terms, and some where they all come up, everybody up at once, and so forth. And so I just felt like that was one of the things that was asked for in the research, but since it has come up in recent conversations, I thought it would be helpful to present that. So we will dive into council committees. Kind of the purpose of council committees, obviously, is to ensure, an enhanced policy review, collaboration. It also allows you to present policies back to council in a smaller setting, facilitates collaboration, and also, of course, just strengthens governance. What the research showed statewide is that larger cities do use formal council committees. That was not something that was an outlier. What was kind of the hybrid approach, and there were very few cities that did not use council committees. So the larger cities that did not, of course, Greensboro and Durham being ones to note, 12 of that 20 data set showed that they used some form of council committee. In terms of the appointment authority for council committees, it is common in these jurisdictions for the mayor to make appointments to council committees. It is less common for the full council in terms of council committees. So just the level set, not resident advisory boards. This is just council committees. It is less common for the full council to make those council committee nominations and or appointments. The mayor's participation and size varies across municipalities. There are some that have a seat designated on the council committees for the mayor. Examples are Raleigh and Fayetteville. There are some that have the mayor appoint to the council committees and do not serve on them. Examples being Charlotte, Asheville, and Winston-Salem. Very inconsistent with the data research. There was no one way fits for every jurisdiction. We are of note smaller in terms of our committee size. Most of those that were surveyed had at least 3 or 4 members on a committee. We've talked about that before. We get into quorum issues with the full council, but most have at least 7-member councils when we look at that 20 data set. We are small as it relates to the size of our council, but most membership in council committees, again, falls into that 3 or 4 members. Another thing that we looked at was kind of live streaming and whether, currently we do not live stream our council committees, and not to be confused with live streaming equals recording. So live streaming is just real time. When the meeting adjourns, that recording goes away. There are some that just do live streaming only. There are others that do no streaming or recording, which is what we have historically done. And then there are some that live stream and record. Again, it wasn't really a one way fits more than the other, kind of split. And then in terms of meeting preference, we have historically scheduled kind of quarterly meetings with the committees unless there's a special meeting needed. So one example would be the finance committee during budget season, et cetera. That is not something that we saw common. Most of them had their monthly meetings or every other month. And if they didn't have an adopted schedule, then they just kind of called them ad hoc. So for us, the town of Apex, our current council committees, the Rules Committee, which was a former committee for the town of Apex, developed this structure. It was adopted unanimously by this council in March of last year and was set to be effective for January 1, 2026. That structure was proposed to remain the same. So it was 2 members, continued with not recording or live streaming the meeting. Obviously, they're still open. The mayor making appointments to those committees, and then continuing with the quarterly meeting cadence. As mentioned before, we will get to each section and we will have some discussion and decision points. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to you all on whether you want to continue with the council committee structure. If you do, who makes those appointments? Do you want to continue with the 2-member size committee? Whether the mayor participates in committees, whether you want them to be live streamed, and whether you want to continue with the board meeting cadence.
You can go back to the other slide, just so that we got that as a discussion point. Thank you.
Thank you for that research. I just want to go back to the December meeting when I made the assignments. And as I mentioned there, I'm glad we're here. We can, kind of discuss this openly and figure it out. My reasons for putting myself on committees the way I did was really to have the work, to work with and teach in a different way. And now I understand that there was concerns with that. Looking at, I talked to most of you about where would you like to serve? And I got everything from the furthest seniority to be the mayor, you make appointments, to I would like to be here or there. So I did my best in making those appointments based on the feedback that I received. So after the meeting, of course, we're here today because there were concerns with how those assignments were made. And I just want to say this, with regard to the mayor's participation, I'm not speaking for Mayor Shockley, I'm speaking for whoever's mayor, once I decide to leave. I just want to make sure they have some engagement and involvement. That's very important. And at the end of the day, there is really no formal vote if there's a decision made or you still have to come back to the board. So with that, it's just like we have work sessions, they're involved with that discussion. So with all of that, here's what I decided to do based on the concerns. And I wanted to hold this until the meeting because I wanted to see the feedback first. I wanted to get the research and really see what was common practice with, municipalities our size or even smaller to see how they handle things. And of course, I made my phone call to Will and the assistant, so thank you. So what I'm going to do is pass around a draft of what I came up with from the past few months. And have some stuff. Sorry about that.
Oh, there's 2 minutes.
All right, I'm just going down the list. I'm going to start with the Environmental Leadership Committee. And this is pretty much the same from December. And the reason I wanted to keep it that way is because we already have the Pro Tem. We have some things we're discussing with data centers, things like that. No need to move them away because I want to keep it consistent. And then Councilmember Sue, who has expressed interest from the beginning of the Environmental Leadership Committee. So I want to keep that as well. The governance, one, Councilman Ed Grace, and senior member of the council, had expressed strong interest in being there. Councilman Arnold is there. I'd like to see him there as one of his financial skill set, experience with the board. I think also, what it shows here is Councilman Gray and Mayor Pro Tem Haffey served in finance before, so keeping Gray there maintains that continuity. I think we have a new member over in that section. Public safety, this is the only one that I signed myself to for obvious reasons. I would really like to be a part of that and say any more about that. Councilman Ed Gray, same thing. Team effort and put that in. And then the last two, I left it open. I think this is an opportunity for us to discuss it and have your opportunity to figure out who wants to go where. So we have a team participation and you guys figure it out. So that's where I landed. then I'll add this too. I know there was a rule that came up with the mayor can't be on any committees. Again, I just want to say for the office of the mayor, I think the mayor needs to be involved with committees if that mayor desires to do so. And so this is where we are, some discussion.
I'll jump in first then, knowing that my comments are not necessarily the most popular, but it's gonna say what's on my mind. So, you know, my thought on the mayor's participation in any of these committees is fairly simple, which is, it does not bother me that the mayor is on any committee or even chair. It doesn't bother me. The thing that I'm always concerned about is whether or not there's quorum on these committees, because ultimately these committees are there to focus the issues to be brought before the entire full body. And if the discussion on town business and we've got a quorum there, that defeats the purpose. So, you know, to me, the idea of, you know, two members on the structure, you know, as we worked in with the rules committee, you know, over a year ago, I think that's a solid structure just to be able to propose these things. I think a big reason behind my view, and it's my view on what the committees are there for. Committees are there to streamline the issues, not exclude the issues, not drive the change, not drive the issue. They're there to streamline the issue because ultimately, regardless of whether this is going through, you know, public safety or whether it's going through vibrant community, it's still got to come before council as a whole for discussion. The initial thought process behind this was, you know, I remember, you know, this was an area that, you know, Carrie and I went over, you know, took months on this one, which is as a council as a whole, we did not have a really good mechanism to be creative and to come up with ideas. You know, we wanted to figure out how do we best allow a council member who's talked to somebody out in the community to be able to say, hey, I've got this idea. Let's figure out whether or not this works. So it shifts the role of the committee to kind of a working committee where they would be working with the applicable departments to help narrow focus research and come up with you know, recommendations to support, or maybe even just say, that idea seems like a good idea, but on balance isn't going to work. It's a way to help streamline the issues ultimately that get to council. A committee can't kill an idea, only council. A committee can't approve an idea, only council. And that's why when I look at these committees from the perspective of the real work, and not to say that the work of the committee isn't important, it's very important, but no one committee has the ability to create policy. It's still us. And that's a responsibility that quite frankly you can't advocate. That's what you are elected. So even if you're not, you know, if you're not on any particular committee, and that's, you know, my view on the committees, I'm flexible. Put me where you want me. I've got no ego in this. So if somebody really wants public safety, I'm more than willing to step aside and take it up. There's not a committee up here that I don't think I can contribute to. There's not a committee up here that I don't think it's valuable. So if someone feels like they've got talent, time, and really a desire to do so, feel free to chat with me. I'm more than happy to step aside. Not an issue to me at all. But I think it's really important for us to remember that the committees are there for the purposes of streamlining the issues for us. They are not policy creation mechanisms. That's all I got. Ready for fights?
Thank you for that.
Preferably not.
Yeah.
So appreciate the comments. I appreciate the mayor coming back with some changes to the structure. And leaving some open for debate here. My understanding from what the rules committee had proposed and what we had adopted last year was that we wanted to start acting more like a bigger governing body, where we would refer issues to committee for all the reasons that Councilmember Graves outlined, you know, to be a little bit more creative, have some interaction with staff, do some research, and stuff that we can't really do on the fly, you know, during council. which makes perfect sense. What my understanding and expectation is coming out of the committee, that is a policy recommendation, based on that research, and thinking that that's happening in a smaller team, that then ultimately comes back to full council for adoption. So far so good. The thing that I am unclear of, and kind of swayed me one way or the other, right now it's swaying me in the direction of, I'm happy with the mayor to participate in any in-house council as a participant, but not as a, quote unquote, voting member of the board. Because I feel that if we are expecting the chair of the committee to put things in front of the committee for discussion, or, not bringing in front of the committee for discussion. But I know those are, some chair responsibilities that I think are unclear to me, or may not even be defined here. So if a chair has a role that can move a proposal forward in one way or another, then I think it's important to consider the role of the mayor, which is not a legislative role by designing in our charter. And so at that point, it becomes problematic for the mayor to have a role as a, in the legislative process as a chair or vice chair. So assuming that the committee chair has some of those privileges, my position has been that the mayor, and again, like I appreciate you saying the mayor, not about Mayor Shark Gilbert, cannot be part of the committee process in a voting capacity. Again, I have no problem with the mayor being present, participating in discussion, making his views known, but not as a chair or vice chair of the committee. Again, we can clarify the rules or what a chair can or cannot do, and maybe I'm not reading too much into it, but again, if I kind of look at what was proposed as, we want to operate like a larger government where, chairs of committees have certain privileges to bring things up for discussion or not. Yeah, then I think it becomes important to kind of separate church and state, so to speak, right? And then, again, at that point, I don't think that the position of mayor can be in a voting or control position. But that has been my position, kind of being based on how I understood it before.
China. Well, today, to address them. The intention of the rules committee was to process, get stuff done. That was all. It was, if you got an idea of something you want to do, how do you do it? Is it that you go to the town manager or the department, say it's on the agenda, it's still an ad hoc. Also has led to events where stuff we rush through was the first one. So there were two goals. One, it was to have a slow process and do a deliberate process, but that should take months. But the intention, I think, was still, Mayor, I had a question for you, because the way we tried to square this circle in the discussions in January, listening to your feedback on it, or listening to David's concerns about legislative involvement, was to put the mayor on every committee as a non-voting member. And that way you're involved in everything, and you either have the choice to go or not go, depending on whether you felt like you didn't work relevant. My recollection is that I thought we agreed on that, and then later that didn't work. So my question is, what happened? That still seems to be a solution that kind of doesn't make everyone happy, but it's what you want. So we're really concerned for that. That was a sincere attempt to you about wanting to work with us. Just it was unconventional, but it was what a lot of the process of what they were taking. So
Yeah, again, going back to what I first said, I think there's a lot of defining the things that needs to be made clear. I want to go back to a question of voting. So we've had these committees before. Also, on the personnel committee. Is there an actual formal vote? I mean, you got two people on a committee. Is that a vote? Is if they both one wants to go this direction, the other goes that direction, what happens then?
So I'll speak to what has happened in the past, and it doesn't happen often, but what's happened in the past, particularly in planning committee and others, if there is a split vote, or if there's not a split vote, maybe there's 0 saying no, don't proceed with this, it's always reported back out to council. So as we've done in the past, and there may be things that I'm not aware of prior to me getting here, but regardless, whether it's a split vote or not, it always comes back to council vote. And so I think that's the other thing. It's also been practice, at least from my perspective, is when we were setting the agendas, I would reach out to all the committee members. So if it was planning committee, the former, I would reach out to Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Gann. If it's a rules committee, then I would reach out to the 2 rules committee members. So it's always been both members have had kind of full autonomy to add things to the agenda. If they wanted to take things off, and if the recommendation was split, it still come back to the full council. That's what's happened in the past.
And I think we would indicate, I'm trying to think through a couple of examples where there was a split, and we could say there was no recommendation from the committee, and so staff would just bring the base.
And I know in finance, we've had, I don't want to say split, but we've had, I think, kind of a moving down from 4 courses of action, and basically kind of we're down to 2, and then those 2 are presented. And because I recall one time there was a conversation point where Terry advanced one position, I advanced the other position, just so that we could get, so that could be fleshed out. And I think, to me, that was a great example of how these committees should work, which is, we, even when we are recommending, using finance as an example, a certain fiscal position, all of the other courses of action are still presented. So you may get the 3 issues that were discussed. Recommendation on course of action 1, course of action 2, the course of action 3 are still presented. And then ultimately, there may be, thinking point, essentially 3 courses of action, majority of council, 4 being on one side and GAP being on another side. So it's not unusual for us to be in a position where that happens. But to me, the beauty is being able to narrow that down from 7 courses of action to 5 courses of action, and be able to come again, talk about and debate 3 in a reasonable way, even if everyone knows about the prior 7.
My other question is this, so the mayor's office has an idea, wants to put something on the agenda. Idea, but on the agenda for the full council. Can that be done?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mayor.
And the rules of procedure says that, yes, the clerk is directed to place it on the agenda.
The idea that we had, that we didn't implement. Any ideas, yours, we put it on the agenda, but it could only be referred. So I couldn't be with that, and that's just kind of the rules. So we have to look and make that, and then it'll be eligible to be adopted.
And the goal for that is, if we're coming up with something, we want to make sure that we've had at least a good staffing process where we may come up, I may come up with a great idea. As we start to talk about it, Marty's in the back going, whoa, no way. It's important to make sure that I just use you, Marty.
It's kind of.
But it's there just to make sure that we aren't missing any critical steps along the way. And that's why when we look at the committee structure as it was proposed, these are groupings that are kind of shared by portfolio, but to make sure that we've got good staffing to help vet the issue before it gets back to us for decision. And I think that to me is always the important thing to make sure that we're reminding ourselves about, which is decision point still comes back to us. Decision point still comes back to us. The job is to limit the COAs, courses of action. Limit the COAs so that when it gets in front of us, we're not sitting here trying to figure out between 18 things what to do. We've got 5, 3, maybe 2 courses of action that have been well researched, that we have confidence that everybody on the staff has had a chance to have their say. Because it's important to know that if, Demetrius says that's a stupid idea, we've got somebody who said that, and we want to be able to hear that voice. before moving forward. And that's the purpose of these committees, once again, narrow, refine the issues, present the issues, you don't create the policy. You'll help us decide what the policy is. Am I overstating that, Terry? That to me seemed to be kind of what how we were kind of reaching at that.
Can you go back to the slide of the municipalities that have the mayor committees?
So this is those that have committees. This is the legislative authority, you know, for mayors that vote. In the memo that was shared with you all, that includes the municipalities that have the mayor on the committees. And I think
We had one that was.
Oh, right here, yeah. But this is appointment, so this is not, this is just who appoints people to the committees, not that the mayor is serving on the committee. You know, so for example, the Charlotte mayor makes the appointments but does not serve on them. The Rawlins mayor makes the appointments but serves on committees. So it's inconsistent. It really depends on what you all prefer. What was common though was that the mayor set the appointment of council committees. Is this a slide you're? Yeah.
So again, going back to question and concern. If I wanted fresh local ice cream to be delivered to all 85,000 residents once a month, there's no way that can get approved unless it goes to the full council.
Correct. But that would be the same for any council member as well.
Correct.
And, you know, that's why if you want to do that, and I'm not saying I'm supportive, I'm gonna say, it sounds like a damn good idea. You know, what the discussion point once that would be brought up at a council meeting would be, okay, which committee is that gonna be referred to for further vetting? And then that committee, whichever committee would be directed to look into the issue, they would then have the responsibility of saying, all right, hey, you know, 30 days, 60 days, whatever the time frame is that we set, they come back and say, your idea to give ice cream to everybody is a great idea. We can't do fresh because that would be showing undue favoritism and unlawful contributions to one particular business. So our recommendation is break it up amongst 8 or 9 different, you know, local businesses that are willing to provide ice cream. That's the sort of recommendation we would get. You know, that's why we would have the committee look into it, because we might have legal say, yeah, we like the idea of ice cream, but identifying one particular business may have these consequences. Or we'll have economic development say, hey, that's great, but if you do it with fresh, our non-downtown business oriented ice cream manufacturers may be hurt. Or we may have, you know, the Media and Community Development say, or somebody from community development say, hey, you know, Brewster's is AAPI owned, we may want to emphasize that. So those are the sort of courses of action that we would then get a chance to say, all right, which sides do we want to balance for if we want to give the ice cream? And of course, Sean is going to say we can't give ice cream because it costs too much money.
I like ice cream.
Noted.
So let me ask the question, and I think that's maybe your question about like voting, what kind of voting should happen on these committees, right? So what is the role? Like, do we have a defined role, a chair of a, but exactly privileges and authority are off that position? Again, like my primary concern is about putting the role of mayor in the legislative process by having a controlling function within a community. If that doesn't exist, I think that takes, you know, some of my concern, because again, that was kind of my understanding of how the proposal was set up. But, you know, I think looking at that larger government, it's not necessarily this set, but yeah, I think I look more at like how state government operates. That was kind of my understanding of where we were trying to go.
So I would say the process that we described is actually new. A lot of it all works at the state level. I can tell you historically in Apex, many meetings have been kind of ill-defined or not specific ordinance. Generally speaking, it was early direction for staff and big picture stuff and winter. At the state level, there's a volume issue where you get 800 some bills to find. Anyone had 50 of them. And the committee chair would, or they would have which ones got on the agenda, given the limited time they have. And that's the authority comes from. Something could just sit on the backlog because the committee chair defines, well, these are the 20 we can do. But that again, that's the state level model. And it hasn't specifically defined how that process works here. We haven't started doing it. So essentially, it also depends on what our rules are. Like you can imagine at the state level, a no vote in the committee kills the bills unless it's pulled from committee by a full body. So it would be referred to a committee, and if it's not favorable, it would be dead. Or if you report favorable, and a lot of times I have serial referral. It goes to committee A, it's favorable B, it's favorable C, and then it's favorable back to the full body. So again, that's really complicated. It's the way they deal with, you know, you imagine a bill or an ordinance that deals with maybe it goes to community engagement to talk about the ice cream incidents, and then it goes to finance, talk about the cost of it. And they each have their slices that they evaluate, and they look favorable, not favorable. So we could do that, could not do that. It could be something that's a process that's put in place if the volume of suggestions is such that the process that we have it can.
I mean, my thought is that we're not getting that level of value. I mean, I think it's incredibly important to understand that our committee system, unlike the General Assembly's committee system, is built to move things forward. I mean, I really do think it's a presumption to move things forward. Not doing that just to, you know, the dump on the dump on the General Assembly, but I mean, their process is built to take 50 ideas and get rid of 40. Whereas our process, I think, from our tone and intent, from accepting and kind of taking the spirit of how our council operates, it's much more of a, all right, we come up with idea one. How do you make idea one as good as you can get? And then give everybody an opportunity to vote up or down, as opposed to, all right, how do you take idea one and kill it?
So where does that do?
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? Out of the research you made, are there any cities and towns that have that state government model, state model? Or do it that way?
I did not see that in the research. I think, you know, one argument could be made that, you know, maybe a larger municipality like Charlotte or Raleigh may do things that way, not based on their meeting cadence, just based on their meeting cadence alone. It's once a month for both of those municipalities. So, you know, I think that the volume, but I don't think the volume is really the question. I think it's the role of the committee membership and the role of the chair that's really what seems to be kind of the holdup here. So it sounds, I mean, just to recap, because I know we've got several other sections, it sounds like there's still interest to retain some standing committees. Obviously the membership size is 2, so we'll, you know, we know that you can't have more than that. Who makes appointments and the list that's been proposed, you know, leave some direction on that.
I think Councilman Zimmerman wants more information about the roles of the chair.
I mean, we can. I don't want to keep funding the ball down to the field here. Right? I think we need to make some decisions, run with it. You know, if it doesn't work, we can course correct along the way. Right? I don't want to, you know, overanalyze this until the cows come home. So I would ask them. So, I mean, and I hear, you know, the comments a lot, right? Like these committees are not set up to kill bills. They're meant to move forward. So with that, let's fill out the rest of the sheets. I think the only thing that's would be good in my head, and then kind of thinking back to the September meeting, you know, the mayor, you made your recommendations. We didn't really have time to work by comment or, give our thumbs up necessarily, right? Like it was kind of a final consensus. So let's move forward. Can we treat this as we treat the advisory board committee where you make your recommendations, there's some debate and discussion. At the time you confirm the nominations and sets the structure.
Yeah, okay, don't have any issues with that. We were just going pretty much by what we've done in the past and not see that's right, But it was going, their appointments, which is pretty much it. And what I'm concerned about, that we don't have to get deep into that. And maybe we may talk about this with resident advisory boards. At some point, we have to really understand what is the mayor's involvement and does it carry any type of authority? Because if I'm making a recommendation and then every time you guys just say, no, we don't want that. I'm not saying you will, but I'm just, for the office of the mayor, we just gotta figure that out. But I'm more than happy, in the future, 2 years from now, whenever it comes up. I'm all about team play. So this is an opportunity right here. We got, 2 committees, discussion. All right, so let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this.
So 4 open spots. So I would say with that change, that council confirms change there. Our responsible development, Chairman Happy, Vice Chair Reese, Vibrant Community, Chair Zigerman, Vice Chairman, we're rounded up. And the other ones is on your side.
Unless somebody wants to take one of my spots, so like I said, I'm always open.
So can I repeat that now?
Yeah.
Okay, so, environmental leadership, governance, fiscal stewardship, and internal support, and public safety as presented. Responsible development, Mayor Pro Tem Happy as chair, Councilmember Reese as member. For vibrant community and economic vitality, Councilmember Reese as chair, Councilmember Mood.
Zigerman.
Okay. Zigerman as chair. And then Mood.
You need say it right.
We can confirm it.
Y'all confirm that?
Yeah. Motion to confirm.
Yes, motion. Read by the.
That's your motion.
Yes.
Second, all in favor, say
Aye.
aye. All right, motion carried. All right, move on.
All right, perfect. So resident advisory boards, I won't get into this, but, really, you know, the purpose of them. As we talked about it's really about the appointment process that we're discussing here. So, in the recent appointments that have been made, one of the things that, has been modified in the process is kind of collecting the elected official nominees, and then, having a mayor recommendation. So just kind of outlining our current workflow, is we'll obviously recruit, we'll review, we'll determine whether they meet the residency requirement, ETJ, current property tax, those kinds of things, distribute the packets, get nominees from the elected body, receive the mayor's recommendation, and then ultimately action on a council agenda. There were 4 primary models in this research that popped up. They are outlined here. One of the 21 denotes that the mayor has the full responsibility to appoint resident advisory boards, unless council directs otherwise. As you can see, that was a less common model. There are 2 municipalities where the mayor has designated seats, whereas council member has the other designated seats. That pops up in two municipalities. What is common, not the most common, is our current practice, which is the mayor recommends and council appoints. The full elected body has say so. So everybody provides one name, and then for the majority, it proceeds. And then only the council sticks to those municipalities. So those are the 4 primary models. Again, with the elected body having the most common practice followed by council only, and then our practice, which is the mayor recommends and council appoints. Another thing that came up recently was whether to conduct interviews. In doing this research, a majority of them do not conduct interviews, and some do. The cases in which they do are where there's a split nomination. So whether it's, 3 and 3, they can't pick on a name, determine somebody. And so they'll interview the candidates, hopefully to narrow down their selection. Also some, as we've talked about previously, will have specific boards in which they will interview for. So if it's planning board, if it's board of adjustment, in some jurisdictions, they have a library board of trustees. And so they designate that board as the candidates have to be interviewed before they are even up for a nomination. Again, looking at our current board size, we are kind of on the lower end in terms of the number of our boards. Most municipalities have less than 20, but again, they kind of fall into that larger range. And again, the population size does not dictate the number of boards, because again, this kind of 40 plus is Winston-Salem, which is obviously not the largest municipality in the state. So a couple of decision points. We have 3, and that is the process for appointing advisory board members, whether you want it to continue to be kind of the mayor recommends, council appoints, whether you like the nomination process that's happened over the last 2 sets of appointments that have come up, whether you want to have formal interviews, and if you do you want to designate what boards go through a formal interview process, or only if there's time, regardless of the board, and then whether we need to evaluate our advisory boards. Personally, we've just done a restructuring of our advisory board, so I think, from our perspective is probably no at this point on whether we need to add advisory boards, but we certainly want to revisit that to see if there's any direction from this body. We did spend a lot of time kind of consolidating boards about a year ago, and so again, just wanted to revisit that. So these are our decision points.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just say, I like it the way it is, was currently set up. I recommend it. And what I'll say is, I like the direction we're going to, where the information is as quickly as you can get it to us. We all have an opportunity to look at all the applicants, and as we can see who's best qualified. Only concern in what has happened in the latest, I'm going to get to that point, is I don't like changing the process right in the middle of something here. Because we had that one that we had pending. We had 2 that went forward. We stopped because it was, I guess, fair time. So I guess we have to figure out what are we doing about that. Want to go back to the city.
So my understanding is that there was interviews that were requested. So based on this work session, whether you all want to set, whether planning board nominees go through an interview process or not, that's our next step. But the way it was left was that there was interviews to be held between those top 2 candidates. If you all don't want to do interviews, and that has changed, then it'll be put back on a council agenda for further direction.
Okay, so just to follow with that, I just try to understand, why was it just those 2? And we had other president advisory board that went forward. So I'm just trying to figure out why was it 20%.
I think that's the decision for you all, because that's what you all decided. That wasn't a.
And I think, I don't have a problem with, the mayor make recommendation, but in the situation, like, if the, recommendation is, it's very different from the majority of the council's recommendation, or there is a tie, between 2 candidates. In this kind of situation, I think we should introduce the interview process.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, the tie, and I know Councilman Reese, he actually nominated 2 people, because I think, I don't know, process maybe wasn't clear as far as if you could, nominate 2, or, why the numbers.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of thinking back to do my appointment where the process was very similar as the way that we do the advisory board now. But it was clear, like, everybody gets, 7 stickers to put on the boards, right? And so right now, we've kind of interpreted this like everybody gets 1 vote or for a position, basically. Now Councilmember Ruiz has taken some liberty with that, right, which is kind of throwing numbers a little bit. So if we kind of clarify that voting mechanism, then I think it's overall a solid process. I really like the way that we have much deeper background and then like how the applications have are much richer in detail. So I think we're generally have done a great job. Interviews, it can be, I think for the statutory boards, it makes sense. Like, I think those are really important. And then, maybe the other boards, in the case of the tie or, don't want to make a decision because we have so many good candidates and we think we want to do a round of interviews to build out the field. Including for the non-statutory. That would be my part.
And I guess with the process, going back to this again, whatever process we come up with, what is the mayor's role in engagement?
So I will speak to it in the research. When interviews were conducted, the council would establish an ad hoc interview committee. And so whoever serves on that interview committee, that's certainly at the discretion of this body. So I think if, planning board, there wants to be interviews conducted, you want to do it as a full council as interviews, you're welcome to do that. But what is a common practice is where they will create an ad hoc committee to interview the candidates and make a recommendation back to the full council. That's what the research shows.
So here's my candid thoughts on this. This is, once again, not popular view, but my presumption has always been that before the mayor was providing us names to vote on, that the mayor was actually doing the thing. That was always my presumption, whether that was an interview, whether that was a phone conversation. I don't think that the recommendation to us is without due diligence. That's always been my thought process. Ultimately presented to us, and I like the process now where, we're getting an opportunity to say, hey, Mayor, here's some names that we also like. I think that puts the presumption on us to do the due diligence. So I tend to say that the interview process is probably not necessary because I don't think we should be recommending names that we haven't done the work on. That's just me. I refuse, if someone comes up to you and says, I need a job recommendation, you're not just giving a recommendation to anybody without knowing who they are. Because that's your name on the line. That's your recommendation. And anybody I'm putting my name behind, I do so with full gusto. But if someone is not getting my recommendation, that's also sending a clear signal too. But I'm never putting my name out there for anybody unless I've at least willing to say, nope, I'm willing to stand with that person. And that's been that has been my understanding of kind of how, or maybe I'm Pollyanna in this, but that's my understanding as to how these appointments should have been coming from the mayor and from others. You're giving us a recommendation, you're putting something behind it.
And if I can answer that, Councilman, with year 6, year 7, whatever, all the recommendations that have been made for President Schwartz. There's only been World War III in September of last year, and so on, just one. And get it done. So I don't know where we're.
I don't know if I call that old one.
Maybe it's a terminology thing here. The way I took it was, like you said, 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 appointments are without problem. And so the way I took Councilmember Moo's comment was it came down to 2 and trying to decide. So not necessarily doing a formal interview process, but allowing each of you, if you wanted, to have a meeting with those two individuals. So if Councilmember Wu wanted to meet with the two that were in consideration, she could go meet with those two and then come back and have, in her opinion, an informed vote because she's now talked to those individuals. But if you were fine with it, you don't have to, whoever wanted is how I took that. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I took it as you wanted further due diligence on your behalf to talk to the two candidates that were there, and you wanted to afford your colleagues that opportunity should they choose to do that.
Actually, I think we should either need a ad hoc committee to do the interview or the council do the interview because, those are a kind of important roles. We need need to be cautious and pick the right candidate.
So there's one point on the interviews I'm in favor of, that I think I brought up is, I've been kind of moving towards trying to empower these women. I think an interview process, public interview process, people that want to get you in and watch, lend sort of some legitimacy to it. Let you go through this, you're sworn in. It's another thing, I want to, once the outcome is known to the appointment, I'd like to invite them in and actually swear them in right after we do it. And again, make it on flat, and they can say something. Like I'm trying to make these feel like a weighty, important thing that citizens want to get involved. So I'll just leave that out there. I personally have not felt as involved in this process over the past 7 years as I wanted to. Tried right away, it's terrible to do it this way or this way. I'm not been able to come to a consensus meeting there or the room. It's not do it. I think what we do now is great. I'll just add the interviews to one of them. There's some and no candidates get a majority. I think that can trigger the interview process. Add hoc committee of the merit project, and then we get to do the interviews and then vote. The other change I'd make is that the council, when we're voting with multiple candidates, should be voting by ballot. That's how councils are supposed to do it. To answer your question, mayor's involvement right up till the survey with the rest of us. You be in the committee, you can chair a committee all the way up until the end, and then make a recommendation. And also do the ballots if it's a contested vote, which is one of them. The other ones, when we know the outcome, even if it's like a split vote, we know this person gets appointed. You can still invite them up, point them, do the swearing in, do the thing. I would ask my colleagues to consider that. To make this feel like a weighty process that's transparent, that's public, that's important, that these positions, you go through something that means a lot. And we have considered all the stuff I did in the insurance,
Yeah, and I want to hear you say it again, it's clear from your goal, but my thing is, why do we just start it right now? That's just my opinion. It just take place. We got everything together to work on, find the process on the books, and then start with a new whatever. So why do we?
Exactly, Mayor, we tried. We tried to come up with a process, but you and I couldn't come to an agreement. So we kicked the can down the road for the resident advisory work plan process.
Okay.
So
But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think in terms of the interview piece, because that was a recent situation that come up, it is something that you all need to talk about and provide us with direction, because when there is a tie, what is the next step? Does it majority vote overrules? Is it, does it go to an interview process? I think that's why, because it recently came up as a suggestion of going to an interview, that's where we left it, is that those two candidates would be interviewed. I included it in the data set to see, okay, well, does other municipalities even do interviews? And so while again, it's a common practice that they don't, there are still some that do. And again, defining what that looks like. I know that what's been mentioned here is that there would be interviews conducted, but it's also been thrown out whether we would just do that for statutorily required boards, or would we do that for all boards, or only when there's a tie. So, yes. No, you. Didn't you say yes? No. I thought you said yeah.
So it's only gonna come up like once or twice a year.
Yeah.
appointments in these situations where it's probably gonna be an open seat, where there's a lot of typically reappointments are pretty. But I think in those cases, I'm fine with doing it for other boards as well. I just think we'll come up that option for other boards. And I think what you can do is you can change the vote if you don't want to trigger the process for the arts board. So, well, you know what? Other people should really have to do that. I think what Councilman Reese said is fine as well. I think someone should vote for 0, 1, or 10 positions. And just whoever gets the majority out of them, as long as we know that's the whole, like as long as we're doing it consistently, I think we're fine too. You know, everyone's fine, vote for them all. You don't want to get anything, vote for
Yeah, and if you don't mind me speaking to that really quickly, that was my understanding of the process, was the opportunity to weigh in and say, hey, these are people I sign off on, and however my colleagues' priorities end up sifting that would the decision would be self-evident at that point. I want to back up really quickly and say, I know this is tense where we're at right now, but it is, I just want to zoom out and say, what a great problem to have. We have so many talented, committed people who are willing to take time out of their lives to come do thankless work for us. And so that is, and then the next thing I'll say though, on the perhaps more rubber meets the road aspect of it is I do believe that the interviews work well for statutory boards and the tie nominations, because especially with those statutory boards, I can read a resume and read feedback from someone. And to your point a moment ago about job interviews, there's been times when I've thought a candidate was a certain candidate, I had a predisposition, and then, you know, perhaps I was underwhelmed. And then but we meet them and we realize, my goodness, this person is on point. And also the other direction too, right? Something can look really good on paper. And the reason I say that for the statutory boards is because there's a lot of public speaking, there's a lot of asking of questions, and I think that there are certain personalities that fit better in those positions than others. The last thing I'll say just is that I think that if we're able to reconcile things today, we will have an improved process moving forward. And I think that we should be kind to ourselves in the fact that we had several people who were comfortable in these positions. And then we'll now have a discussion. The other thing I'll say is that I don't want people to feel like pawns, like they're just being washed around, or just because they're caught up in the process. And the good news is we've got great candidates who will, I'm sure, find their way to the boards at some point, if not now, in the next cycle, as folks rotate off.
Thanks for your comments. All right, so we're back at, just for the record, I'm good with interviews. I don't have a problem.
Okay.
I was just trying to understand how we got to this at this point. Just for the record, the numbers. When you display the numbers at that council meeting, it was his count, was Councilman Gray's count.
No, because I didn't receive a submission on that. At that time, I have since gotten that submission. Okay, so what I'm hearing is to keep the mayor recommends, council appoints, having formal interviews for statutorily required boards and only for others if there's a tie nomination, and then going from there.
One more question, is there a standardized process? How does that work? Like,
For interviews,
yes.
I think that's TBD. I mean, because this will be the first one.
So is the intention of everyone to interview all? I mean, so what I heard you say was different than what I had. I'll do an interview only for ties planning board.
Yes.
You can interview for all planning board, and then
I'm okay with that, just to kind of get out of the gate, because we really love the process, and this is something that we want to do more universally. And again, we can scale, but I also want to make sure that we're not overcommitting and now we're interviewing like 16 candidates for 2 positions.
I would say the rule that I think popped in my head from this discussion was if no candidate gets a majority, who then interview the nominated candidates. Or if multiple candidates get the majority, because multiple people are doing it, then we interview the candidates that got the majority. Yeah, just to sort of like whittle down, like, so if 50 people apply, we all between us, we come up with 7 different names, but no one actually is towards the mark who interviewed the 7. So,
Well, I just also wanted to put forward, I would be happy to be part of the process where I, like you said a minute ago, just have one sticker. And the one vote on the ballot. I think that may be, that is a change from what my understanding was in terms of these recommendations. But if that makes things smoother, I'd be happy with that.
I think that if we're doing interviews, I don't see a problem with with the way that you did.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think with that as an understanding, I think it basically says.
But then we gotta make it universal, that's overall.
Yeah, you gotta make it universal.
Right.
and I would say that approach is necessary in the situation. So if we get 30 applicants who don't have a yes, no on all of them, no one will get the majority. It's
Exactly.
almost possible, right? Like, when you have 5 applicants, maybe, when you have a lot, yes. Well, the problem we want to have, you sort of have to be able to check them all at once, or you won't be able to. So have like, that's there.
Yeah, so I mean, we have to do it that way if we get large numbers.
So just to clarify, so a vote is basically a yes, no vote on each candidate. Like, I would be okay with this candidate, or I'm not okay with this candidate. So it's kind of independent of the number of open positions, right? So if there's one position or 2 positions, 8 applicants, we get basically 8 votes. It's binary, it's either, yay or nay, and, out comes a majority or not. That if the tie or no majority, we go to the winner.
Yes,
That's what we just said. Okay.
yes. Only in the situation of high or, the majority is
Right.
different from
But we all get, basically as many votes as there's candidates on, for the position.
But again, if you vote for all of them, that's the same as what.
Correct.
Like, you have to differentiate.
Yeah.
You're just right.
Mathematically, right.
Yeah.
All right. Can I ask about balloting? Like, it's sort of bugged me for a while. Way board make appointments. Control them off with the ballot.
You swayed me, I can do balance.
Yeah. Just give me that. And that's again, only for the contested ones that was.
Yeah.
Ones
But
where
they
no
can't be
one's going on,
anonymous.
it's twice.
Cannot be anonymous.
Cannot be anonymous.
No, it's, I mean, you read them
Yeah, I
all.
would read it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
The way we did them for the
But
council
it's
candidates.
simultaneous. It's not.
I passed them out, collected them, and then read them. Okay, all right, so moving on to,
Do we need to vote on that, or do you have your remarks more on this, you're unclear?
and so my
Why don't you
understanding,
summarize it as number brings, maybe
Yeah.
consent or something, like
Yes.
change to the rules?
that's what I did.
What, just more clarity, am I involved with every process?
Everyone,
Yes.
so I think when we do interviews,
Yeah.
I think whoever wants to do it. Raise your hand, we're gonna interview minutes. Right? We do.
Yeah.
If all of us can all do it.
And quick gut check, really quick on, I have to say. We're talking about going to people that are volunteering to be on a board. And we're gonna say, you don't have majority support from the council. And now we want you to go through an interview process to see if we want to select you for a non-paying position. I just, to your point, Councilmember Mahaffey, I hope you guys can work to avoid a tie. Because I think if you get to a tie and you have to force people to go through an interview, we are either a very fortunate community where people will be still willing to participate, or you're gonna go back to those people and they're gonna say, you know what? If I don't have
Forget it.
support, give it to the other person.
I wouldn't
And they
say-
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this is a very important position that has statutory authority, and you're doing this like,
I know.
like, coming to a council meeting.
The perception is there already.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I wish we can have more openings and more advisory boards for the, for our great residents, because I know they're eager to participate and contribute. Yeah.
So that is the question. I mean, is there any desire to evaluate?
I like the number of boards that we have.
Okay.
I like being able to give the boards the ability to appoint subcommittees as necessary. And then, now, do we want to have a number of boards expand? I think with regard to there are some boards that I think are automatically expanding and contracting based upon
Correct.
the number of participants. I mean, I don't think we ever told anybody, like, you can't be on arts advisory. I mean, I don't think we've ever said that. Pardon me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not appointed to the board, then they're.
Right, but
That's saying-
but most people, are, yeah, I mean, most people are like, it's like, you on, you get on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that sort of thing.
Okay, so I'll summarize this and we'll make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, elected official financial policy. So a couple of things that have come up is that we have obviously a financial policy for town staff. We don't have one for elected officials. And then, so just wanted to kind of talk through some best practices. Again, this was also included in the research. It's also included some best practices from the School of Government, as well as just standard financial controls across the state. So we'll look at these 5 categories: P cards, mileage and meals, lodging, training, and documentation. So again, these are best practices from the School of Government and from the peer communities. In terms of P cards, and again, I won't hit all of these bullets. It is uncommon for elected officials to have P cards. What is common is for there to be a department card that obviously is checked out. And then also a recommendation of kind of a limit set for if you are checking out a card, what can be spent. And then mileage. What is proposed in the memo that you all received was kind of having a determined boundary area. I felt like that was cleaner versus having a particular mileage. Some jurisdictions said 100 miles, round trip. In the memo, it defines Johnston, Chatham, Durham, and Wake as being those areas that would be covered under your existing stipend, so not eligible for mileage reimbursement. And then if anything outside of that would be, of course, reimbursed in the IRS rate. In terms of meals, obviously only when it's conducting public business and defined as official functions. Inside that 4 county area boundary, the stipend would cover unless, again, as defined as official function. Also, as it relates to meals, similar to employees, you would get an advanced meal stipend or per diem. If you're going out of town or an event is coming up in which meals are not provided. Lodging, we don't have really a big issue with that here, but it did come up in some of the policy research. And so it was common for the county in which a municipality set, they would not have lodging unless there was kind of a defined emergency or accommodation. And then travel and training. What was common in municipalities was to have kind of a cap per member defined, and then any out-of-state travel requiring the council's approval before doing so. And then stipends here, and what is common is that there is a stipend issued. What did pop up in several policies was kind of this tier for food and events that is covered under stipends. And then again, defining reasonable expenses, directly tied to town business, etc. Looking at town halls, office hours, and community meetings, obviously those being covered by the town, and what those limits are per meeting, and then whether you all want to have an annual limit per member. And then, of course, documentation and receipts need to be provided. So if you have your phones, please hand this to you.
One question there.
Yep.
What's that? Oh, no, I was just gonna say, was parking covered under that part stuff?
So that is in the mileage survey that I've got pulled out. But for most, it is in a memo that parking is considered like taxis, those kinds of things within that 4 boundary area is covered under the stipend.
I just want to go on record and say this, with regard to the P card. The P card that when I took the office in 2019, I was in my office, the town clerk at that time opened my office and said, hey, by function, you get a P card. Here it is. I didn't ask for one, never asked for one, and obviously I had one when I was an employee here. So I just wanted that to be known. I didn't request a P card. Make that clear. I don't have a problem with giving up my P card. Okay, everybody good? Good? All right,
Perfect.
so.
Okay, so if you will scan this QR code, there's some questions for policy considerations, and then I will display the results. It outlines about 6 or 7 things, so if you will scan this.
Show the front of
Pre-pandemic
the
phones.
I need it. I need to say it. Okay.
I'm gonna have to walk up here.
Okay.
Walk of shame.
Your pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
Me
My
too.
kids have newer phones than I do.
and did you get it?
Have to come here. The website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about number 2,
Yes.
the four boundary area, is that within that area, you're not entitled to reimbursement?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Community meetings. Number 6.
So, in the memo, it talks about, if you have community meetings where all members of the public are invited and or all members of the elected body, for a particular purpose, funds can be used, but then there's reporting, who was invited, who attended, and then what was the purpose of it. And if it's over a certain threshold, then it requires council approval.
And only if approved.
Correct.
By whom?
You all.
Okay, so. Thank you for your patience with the question. If somebody has a cost and they want to pay it,
If it doesn't fall under one of
it
those
doesn't fall
tiers,
on one of these,
or
then
you've exceeded it, then it comes to you all for action.
what's the problem? I'm just trying to figure out what the logistics of that is. It's sent to you, you then
It would go on.
we go to send.
I mean, obviously, we could send it to you all beforehand, but it would be something that would you all's. Got 2 responses. 3.
Is it possible you could go back to the stipend amounts again?
So stipends for the current stipends.
So this is a different stipend than the stipend that we received today. Right?
Correct. Yeah. So it is.
In addition to it.
No, so this is tiered food limits. So this is not the actual stipend. This is up to this amount, it should be covered under your stipend.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Correct. So your stipend would cover things in this category.
Is that per event or is that per month?
Correct.
Per event?
Correct.
Or even, okay.
So you would choose.
And is there a monthly limit?
In this slide, it talks about
Annual.
annual $1,500. Okay, 6. Perfect. Okay. So, first question, should elected officials be issued a P card? 1 said yes, 3 said no, use department only, and 2 said no, reimbursement only. Second,
Supportive of the 4-county boundary area. Majority supported yes, by going with that area. Should there be member caps on travel, training, and events? Yes. Here for that. Stipend levels, retain the current stipend amount. A majority said to continue to retain that. 2 said to increase the current stipend.
I love those two.
Do what?
It's okay. I said, okay, I chose, keep the current amount, but I said I love those two voted to increase.
And then, what should the stipend cover? So, 5 said, the meals, local travel, and then community meeting supplies. So again, and then, and 5 people said that, and then should town funds be used to support, and then check how that apply. Office hours, task force meetings, community meetings, only if approved, and then promotional material. Any questions on these results? And I'll email those.
What's the implication of this?
Do what?
So what's the implication of this?
So this will help inform what goes in the policy. So based on your direction here is how we would draft the policy for you all to consider.
Go ahead.
So so for one example, should elected officials have a P card, it'll be in the policy that they do not, because the majority of people all said they should.
So here's one thing that I do want us to consider is that, we have different levels of stipends, Mayor Pro Tem gets, I think, $8 a month more than the rest of us, and then the mayor gets a little bit more, presumably because they have more expenses than the average council. So if there is a challenge on what the stipends should cover or how much it should cover, I think we need to make a look at the amount of stipend, especially mayor versus council, right? Because that's where the biggest difference is. Because the mayor doesn't have more functions that we do, presumably have more like parking expenses and things like that, right? So rather than crashing on the policy around what is in and what is out, I think it's probably prudent for us to all, look at where stipend levels are, mayor and council members, to make sure that it covers the expenses that we generally understand to be. And if, because I see a lot of 4s and 5s, which I presume Mr. Mayor is you saying like, hey, listen, I have expenses that are not here, right? And so I do want to acknowledge that, and, we can accommodate that outside of a policy, but through setting the appropriate stipend level for function.
Okay.
I agree.
So would it be helpful to kind of get results on what pure stipend
I
amount
think
would look like?
that'd be good.
Okay.
And also, I think it would be good to just get input from the mayor as to like, here's how much I gotta spend every month. So that we can better accommodate, because I don't think my stipend should be the same amount. It just, others may feel otherwise than I am.
Really, if you, just by coincidence, you had that slide, could you go back one? I just wanted to put some words to the reason why I voted for this right here was this specifically is if you've got town hall community meeting limit of $400. Just, I feel like that should round up to an even $1,600. If you're having one a quarter, I just felt on principle, it felt like incongruent.
Okay. Thank you for noting that. Okay. All right, next section is elected official with press releases. And what was seen in our peer communities. So again, the purpose is that these are best practices. So it's obviously not a policy, but it is common for staff to see or to have and go by a social media policy. It's inconsistent for elected officials to have said social media policy. What was common is that there be, an official social media archiving through the municipality, and also, I'm gonna have to switch screens.
Okay.
That's okay. And then press release standards, inconsistent, and then branding inconsistent. So what does that mean? Obviously, you all, the do's and don'ts, just as a reminder, you're not going to discuss legal matters, you're not going to discuss confidential information. It's to engage with the community. You're not going to delete comments from a post, et cetera. And then if you will, and we've got some decision points for you.
Question when you phrase correctly, is it official social media accounts or
Yeah, I
unofficial
need
social media?
that part of the good.
Hold on.
I need a new phone.
This one.
No,
Sure, an official account is open in the town master.
I think an official account, an account is where it says, council member Arno Zegerman, rather than just your own personal.
You give the impression that it is an official account.
This may be a topic of discussion, but is there a desire to have? And I think it's probably better to have official accounts. So like if you go to the White House page, it's the White House page. But each president basically occupies that page during that time period. And then after they're done, their stuff gets archived. The White House page continues. That's an official.
I would say what is common, at least for those that have a social media policy for, let me say best practices for elected officials, is that it's distinguished, that it's your official page. It's a disclaimer that's noted that, hey, this is not representative of the entire body in which I sit on. This is my views. This is my official town page. So obviously it's subject to public records law, et cetera. But I wouldn't see that page continuing over just to your, if someone else fills that seat, it's really there, not the same. Yes. Any response?
Number 11 says engaging with town staff via social media. That is members of council engaging in official or unofficial, either way. This is all encompassing.
Right.
Okay.
Like if you tag, like if you know that Diane does planning and someone comments on your page, are you going to tag her in it?
Thank you.
No.
Number 4, may elected officials issue individual press statement. What does this, can you clarify what kind of individual press, statement?
So if you put out an official statement that says from the office of Councilmember Mood, do you think that that's okay? 1, and then 2, do you feel like if you do that, you need to notify your colleagues?
Okay,
Or
so
not.
this is personal, not like, only from me,
Well, I
not
think
from the, the
that's
elected
been-
body.
That's been what's been confused, I think, in the past, is that when you issue a statement as you, Councilmember Mood, it is viewed as you, the town of Apex, Councilmember Mood.
Got it, thank you. This one is confusing.
That's it.
This last topic.
I am still worried about the definition of official account. I mean, what do you mean? official?
Again, best practices and what is perceived as your official account.
What are the consequences?
It's up to you all. If you don't follow it,
Yeah. like if
I think
there's-
I think there is a good faith desire that you all would kind of adhere to each other's desires and wishes. But you choose not to do this. That's why these are best practices of what we've seen in other communities and how do we address the policies.
My concern is more liability, right? If one of us goes out and presents something, our executive goes and accounts, and I make a statement that seems to come to the town or be an official statement that commits us to doing something, and now we're on the hook for it because it wasn't properly disclosed, but it was personal opinion or a private account, it's, like anything here is just personal opinion only, right? And so something that, the public cannot tell apart from official town business. So are we, inadvertently committing ourselves to something or, creating a liability for the town through our communications, in our private chat? And so, because I think if we have official communications to make, they should go through town channels, like officially town maintains social media, press releases, whatever, instead of coming from individual elected officials. And so that's really where I think that it's good to separate the two and make it very clear. This is my personal page. You look at my personal opinion here. You get my read of the council meeting from last night instead of, this is an official statement on behalf of the town. Right? And like if we start blurring those lines, I think, we create confusion amongst the public. And then again, potentially creates a liability. And I think there's a precedent for that. That's, I would like to avoid.
There's 11 and 12. Engaging with town staff with social media, that is confusing. For example, if some if I made announcement like that, this data center, right? We approved that resolution unanimous. And if some residents ask why is 1 year not longer, so I can just based on my understanding, or consult, Lori and answer. I don't have to engage with the town.
Right.
And so it's confusing, right?
So this is, what do you prefer as a practice? I think what we explained to Councilmember Reed is, do you think it's acceptable to engage with town staff? Would you tag a town staff member in your post? Do you think
Maybe
that's
don't
acceptable?
have to, it's bothering others. Yeah, but I do think if the question and answer regarding, town business, like as a whole, like the question I just, I mentioned, I consulted Lori for my answer to make sure it's, correct and not misleading. So I think this should be, the practice, right? If we speak on behalf of the town, something, right?
So that would be kind of getting to this one, whereas you would redirect it to an official town email, right?
But I answer on my social media because the comment is on my social media post, under. I don't have, if I receive the emails, it's easier, right? Yes, I received the emails asking questions. I consulted Lori and then I replied, directly to that resident. That is from email, but on Facebook, I just, replied the comment directly after I consulted with Lori. So how do you, make this clear? I don't think it's clear in these questions.
So you would not engage with town staff via social media. You wouldn't have tagged Lori in it and said, hey.
I don't have.
Right, that's what
consulted.
this is asking, is that okay to do?
Okay, then no.
Right,
it's confusing, yeah.
Don't tag me, I won't see it.
And some town staff may not have social media accounts.
Right, but those that do, yeah.
It's, you know,
So
I wanna
it's a
keep
best
it.
practice to
yeah,
not do.
because some, some town staff, they don't want to be bothered,
Correct.
right? Yeah, because the residents sometimes ask irrelevant questions, right? Right, okay.
So original question, like what, like create a policy with.
It's not, so it's not a policy, it's a best practice guidelines.
Okay, I like that better.
Okay.
So he's just trying to gauge what you all would like to see in your best practices so that he can work on drafting this document.
Right.
And then it needs to go through legal review because as you acknowledge, there are First Amendment protections that you all have not lost just because you have run for and been elected to office. So, and then, I'd have some recommendations, but
Can we hear them?
I think it's problematic to try to direct a council person or mayor to have a statement on their social media that says, hey, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else, because that can be viewed as coerced speech and violating the First Amendment. So what I would say is that the town itself, at the council's direction, should be the ones saying, hey, if you want the official town take on something, here's our website, here's our social media, blah, 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 blah. If you want the town's official position on something, if you want to know what Councilmember Gray thinks about something or Councilmember Reese, then, sure, reach out to their social media. But if you want the official anything, you need to be reaching out to the town.
You good?
Yes, I think, do we have one category, like if one of the council members or the mayor make announcement on the social media, like mayor of Apex, council of Apex, member of Apex, right? If anything town related, can, how do I read this? Yes, this, a person should post the correct information. If not sure, consult the staff or attorney before posting. If just personal thing, like I went there, meet somebody, I talked to some residents, it's fine, right? But like town official business stuff, it should be correct. No a personal opinion with inside that message post. Do we have any here in your question? I don't see it.
No, because I think getting to Lori's point, we wouldn't be able to control that. So, you can do a censure, and come out and publicly say that, hey, which is an extreme measure. You can come out and say, hey, we don't agree that this was factual and this is not how these events took place. But aside from that, I don't know of anything else that you could really do other than a private conversation.
Yeah, okay, can we make some, recommendation or from your summarization, like any official town related business should be correct? Like if I quote the resolution directly from our website, right, that should be fact, right? Or, consult the staff or attorney, to make sure it's actual fact.
So like, if that's what you choose to do, that's great. Unfortunately, that's not how the First Amendment works. Right?
Okay.
Under the First Amendment, you can say whatever the heck you please, right?
Uh,
You can say like, what, the mayor showed up with blueberry yesterday, right? And it was, it was despicable and like.
With hair. With hair.
And so like, everybody's looking at the video going, it's like, that is not factually correct. So, that's your right under the First Amendment.
So are we ready to show results?
Okay, I haven't submitted. Okay, submitted right now. I do have, you know,
Okay. So,
you-
prefer disclaimer on social media accounts, so, all said yes, to having a disclaimer on their social media account. Allowing comments on official accounts, 3, so a majority is saying yes, they think that it should be, or at least post by post. Should policy include professional conduct standards? Yes. May elected officials issue press releases? 2 said yes, 2 said with a disclaimer, 1 said no, and 1 said yes, as long as they notify the all council group prior to distribution. Must officials notify all council group when responding to media requests? That's kind of split on the board, so it's always 2 said aye, 2 said no. So I think at least the majority is saying yes in some way, form, or fashion. Officials speak for themselves unless authorized. So yes, it's going back to the disclaimer statement. Can elected officials independently issue emergency statements? Yes, as long as they have a disclaimer. Yes, restricted to the topic, or no, depending on official like crisis communication. Should the town or have official capacity social media posts for elected officials? Yes. What archiving method should be used? Kind of an automated process. That is a common practice for other municipalities. Forward and retain private messages involving town business only upon request. Engaging with town staff. No, through social media, handling constituent requests. Prefer to direct those through official emails. A combination of based on the topic. And then can elected officials use town logos, seals on official accounts? A majority said no, with 1 saying with prior approval and 1 saying yes always. To continue.
I had a perspective on this. I think a lot of these problems would be solved if we had essentially a rule of 3. An official, town managed, town owned, operated social media account. And you guys can have your own political social media account that you may have from the campaign, and then you can have your own personal non-political, whatever it is. I know I've got, you know, a Facebook account that just is personal, and I've got the campaign one. Try not to get the campaign one too conflated with anything on the town, but if we, to solve a lot of the problem of what's official and what's not official, if we had a, you know, a town-owned, you know, council member Reese page that he gets to post on, and you guys get to manage and maintain, it would go a long ways to maintaining our records.
The one thing about Archive Social, at least to my understanding, is that you do have to sign in to your accounts through that platform. And the town has Archive Social, and then we set the record retention schedules on our end. But that's with your existing account, but you do have to sign in. But we wouldn't be doing posts, you know, anything like that on our behalf. But it does help automate, and it is a common theme. Okay. Are we good to continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So something that's come up more common recently is events, office hours, and community use with the elected body. And so this is trying to gauge what does staff support look like, use of town facilities, branding, et cetera. There were 4 policies or similar that existed of the 21. So it's a very new thing, I think, that's being developed or coming from a policy standpoint. In speaking with those that didn't have a policy, they either have general guidelines or they are working towards a preferred policy. They do define the level of support, town resources, and the role of elected official and official capacity versus personal process. Got it.
And while you're thinking through, while you're thinking through on this one, I would like to remind everybody of,
This can work.
these events as they relate to, campaign events and election-related events. We cannot use public funds on campaign events to, support or oppose any referendum, election, or any particular candidate for elective office. So, and, that includes city employees' time. City employees cannot, participate in campaign activities on the clock. And this would include use of town resources like property.
I have a quick question in regard to number 5. Um, Should the town promote town halls, office hours, events? Yes, all. Yes, when open to all members of the public. And yes, when open to all. What's the difference between when open to all?
So yes to all, yes, only when open to all members of the public or no. Okay. So please do not use.
Got it.
Thank you.
So which one do you want us to?
The third.
C.
The third one, cross it off.
Because it was an all.
Okay, that's. We'll still count it. We know what you mean. Only one more after this.
Okay. Number 7,
Yes.
it's council approval required for what?
The whole official events, office hours, community.
Okay, got it.
Some of these things we've assumed in the past, and so we don't want to assume. We got 4. It. Review the results. 50-50 split on the level of staff support, logistics only versus active coordination. Is professional staff required or optional? Or, the majority said it was optional, 2, it depends on the topic. Should elected officials have priority to access to facilities for events in their official capacity? A majority said yes. Should there be a limit to the number of town halls for officials? 2 said yes, 2 said no, 2 said maybe. Should the town promote town halls, office hours, and events? Yes. And then yes, when open to all members of the public. So yes is the determining factor there. Should the event, office hours, or comment, be the event, be advertised? Yes on the website, yes on the website and social media. And yes, website and print material. Is a council approval required? The majority said yes. Should financial support be provided? A majority said yes. If so, to what level? Only the member stipend. Two members said that the member stipend should cover, only for like refreshments, event-specific tiers, and of course, pending council authorization. Last item is the public forum. So again, just revisiting public forum, some of our current guidelines, are not current with our. And so this is just a reminder that we only have to offer once a month of public forum, or public comments. Our current practice is we require them to be in person. We've limited it to 12 speakers and or 36 minutes. We've asked that they identify themselves. We've acknowledged that there's been any written comments that have been received, and we have previously said no to electronic presentations being loaded on our equipment for IT and various other reasons. If we could get a recommendation on the topic. And 3 responses so far. 4. Thanks. 5. 1 more. Should public forum participants be in person? A majority said yes. Should public forum be at each regular meeting? So that's twice a month. Yes. Public forum shall be limited to 12 speakers or 36 minutes, whichever comes first. For the current practice. And then when more than 12 speakers have signed up or 36 minutes have been reached, a majority vote to amend the time is preferred. 3 members, while others say a majority vote by the town council to continue, or the discretion is the providing officer.
I'll just add a note that something I've seen other bodies do. I don't know if you can process and you're researching this. They would split up public forum if it goes over. So in this case, it had 12 or 36 minutes. And they would go and the time we could say, okay, well, we got to do the rest of the meeting. So we do the rest of the meeting and have another public forum at the end. Who wants to stay? You know, whether it's 2 hours later or whatever, still there, they can speak.
If we did the other way around, instead of like, okay, like we just reached 36 minutes, now we're gonna make a change. Can we make a change before everybody starts to keep it equitable and say, okay, we got 16 people signing up, we're gonna give everybody 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So that everybody has a chance, but we still kind of keep it with the time limit that we set for ourselves. Because otherwise, like 12 people have a chance to speak, and then like we're gonna condense, you know, the people that sign up.
2 minutes.
So I don't think there was consistency in the policy as it relates to that. I do know that, it's often seen as amending the time restriction. So if it's 3 minutes, and you've got, let's say 14 speakers, you reduce everything down to 2 minutes per speaker. But that's done obviously at the beginning. So from an equitable standpoint, you're doing that on the onset.
But
So
that's
the way the question is phrased is like, after 36 minutes, that's been correct, right? So now we're just, now we're gonna squeeze everybody, but, we have the sheet going into this. So I mean, you can tell up front that, okay, we have more than 12 speakers, or, we got 6 speakers with 9 minutes. So, we're gonna go over our time limit, so we're going to take action before everybody gets started.
everybody good with that?
I still saw nothing on singing in there, so.
10 minutes.
Okay. So, the goal is to get some draft policies over to legal for the 1st of May. And then get it to you all by the 1st of June. And then, have them for you all to adopt in June. If we obviously need to have another work session, then we can do that, to revisit any of these items. But
Questions? So the planning board, that's gonna stay.
and we'll what?
The interviews.
We'll proceed with scheduling interviews.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
I didn't see that. Okay.
yeah, the policies is what's specific.
Questions? Is that it?
There is one remaining item that I don't have anything prepared for, which is the name.
Oh, the name.
Rights, and I don't know if you all want to kick that to next week's work session. We have one Thursday. And if there's anything that you all need for that, then certainly let us know, but that was one of the items that had been requested for today.
Do you mind sending out the current policy?
Sure.
I'm taking so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Boy, that.